Have you ever found yourself pouring everything into your entrepreneurial dream, but still feeling a gnawing emptiness or battling the creeping shadows of addiction? It's a struggle far too many face and often in silence. But what if I told you finding true fulfillment isn't just a pipe dream, but an achievable goal? This episode is for every entrepreneur who has felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities of leadership, crushed under the weight of business pressures, or faced inner demons that seem to take the joy out of their achievements. Today, we sit down with David J. Greer, a seasoned entrepreneur coach and author with over 45 years of experience who has walked this path himself. David's journey is one of triumph and transformation, guiding us through his early fascination with computers and business, his rise and fall with a global software company, and his battle with alcoholism. Through it all, David has emerged as a beacon for entrepreneurs, focusing on helping them not just succeed, but thrive both in business and in life. In this episode, you'll discover actionable strategies to align your business with a compelling future vision and navigate complex challenges that come with entrepreneurship, especially those related to addiction and mental health. David will share his powerful insights on why enjoyment in your entrepreneurial journey is non-negotiable and how having a clear vision can help overcome fears and challenges. As always, if you found value from this content, please like and subscribe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulis, and this week, my guest is 45-year-plus entrepreneur, coach, and author, David J. Greer. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. As I mentioned, you've had a long history as an entrepreneur. Could you, for the audience, just give us your backstory and how you got into becoming an entrepreneur?
Yes. So when I was in grade 8 or 9, I had some experiences where I just had this vision where I knew I wanted to take business and computers and put them together. And this is way back, like in the mid 70s, when computers weren't as common as they are today. And I went to university to get my computer science degree. And when I was in second year, a friend of mine referred me to an MIS, Management Information Systems Manager, for the largest cable company in the Vancouver area. And I got hired as a summer student. And while there, I got to work with a brilliant consultant, programmer, entrepreneur who was rewriting this system for the cable company that wasn't scaling, it wasn't working. And I worked with him for, I don't know, 18 months or so. And about the time I got hired by the cable company, this consultant, Bob Green, with his wife, Annabelle, founded a software company, Robel, named for the concatenation of their two first names, Robert and Annabelle. And in fourth year, I joined their company as the first employee after the two founders. And as part of my employment, I had to agree to submit an abstract to the Hewlett-Packard International User Group meeting that was happening. And that abstract was accepted, and I had to write the paper. And I took a week off of university to fly to San Jose, where I gave my first presentation. And I was 22 years old, standing up on the San Jose convention floor, telling a bunch of computer geeks about this cool software and what it could do for them. And a decade or two later, I found that that's kind of the essence of sales. But I was just a computer geek, like helping other computer geeks. And I liked the place. I stayed 20 years and built it into a global powerhouse. And we had various corporate kind of structures. Kind of 4 or 5 years in, we started an R&D company that I owned half of and became president of. And then Annabelle wanted to retire. I bought her out. We folded the R&D company back into the parent company, and I became partners with Bob for 10 more years. And then 20 years in, we'd specialized in a very particular computing platform from Hewlett-Packard. And we knew kind of the end of that market was coming, but not exactly when. And Bob and I had a huge disagreement about the future strategy of the company. He wanted to just let go half the employees and just milk the market until the last customer left and close the door. And I wanted to like take a little more risk, a little more money and move. Like we'd built an incredible team and I wanted to move it into new areas. I think both strategies were viable, but they weren't complementary. So we had I only had one really big disagreement with Bob in 20 years, but it was a doozy. And he ended up buying me out. And I ended up on the street in early 2001. And not noticing there's a dot-com meltdown. And, I'm busy like chasing deals. And finally, someone smarter than me sat me down and said, David, your kids will never be 11, 9, and 5 again. Like, do you need to work right away? And I'm like, no, I got a pretty good check in my jeans. And I'm not done for life. And, with that, I literally, if your listeners can imagine a big, huge light bulb in the most cartoonish way going over my head, that was my aha moment. And my wife and I decided to commission a sailboat in the south of France. And we took our 3 kids and homeschooled them for 2 years while sailing 5,000 miles in the Mediterranean. So, I didn't even realize what a dream it was until I've been reading books about long-term cruising for a long time and been a sailor since I'd been 12. And we'd already owned a couple sailboats, but I had no idea how big that dream was until someone pointed out that there was an opportunity to do something different. So after that, I came back. I did 3 years of angel investing. That was like completely unfulfilling. I just found working with young in-role entrepreneurs, they weren't necessarily young in age, although many of them were. Again, like Bob and I, we grew this company by the seat of our pants. And I'm 25 years old. I've probably already gone to 15 trade shows. I've given, multiple technical presentations to, relatively big audiences, 75 to 100 people. And, being on the trade show floor, selling software. I've been listening to people's requests for enhancements and asking them if I did that, would they buy the product? And it turns out that's, the essence of product management. So I had all these skills, and it was just hard to bring these young CEOs up the ladder. And eventually I hired a brilliant coach, Kevin Lawrence, on my 50th birthday. And we started working together and we got kind of things rolling in my career, and we cleared the table of kind of all the other clutter. And the only thing left was my biggest challenge, which was on January 27th, 2009. I admitted to Coach Kevin I had a drinking problem. And Kevin doesn't have a problem with alcohol, but he has friends who were in 12-step recovery. And so he coached me to go to a 12-step recovery meeting. And that date is actually a Tuesday. And I committed to him to go to a meeting by that Friday. And being the overachieving individual that I am, I was going downtown that evening for a technology networking event presentation. And it finished at 8. And I looked online, and lo and behold, there was going to be a 12-step meeting a quarter of a block off the road. I was going to drive by on my way home, and it started at 8:30. And I went to that meeting. And that was the day before was the last day I took a drink. And now I've been over about 15 years, 10 months, and 6 days sober. And I made that group my home group, and it's still my home group today. In fact, tonight is a Tuesday, and I'm going to be there at 8:30. And there'll be at least 2 or 3 people there tonight who were there the night that I walked in for the first time. And with Kevin's help, I did a bunch of senior executive gigs, usually in senior marketing and sales positions. But it was always working with entrepreneurial friends of mine, and kind of behind the scenes, I was helping work with strategy. The last of those was VP of marketing for a 35 million a year publicly traded company in the telematics space. That's devices like you bolt to your truck or your car and you track in real time for fleet management and for a whole bunch of ways to improve efficiency. And I came out of that gig and I realized I'd worked as hard in my mid 50s as I'd worked in my entire career. And I committed to myself that I wasn't going to work that hard again. So that was kind of a big, huge pivotal turning point. And I also decided that, I'd had this gift of sobriety and so many other gifts from Coach Kevin that I decided, like him, to become an entrepreneurial coach. And so that was, I guess, about 9 years ago now. And I started my coaching practice and sharing my experience, strength, and hope, both in business to entrepreneurs and also in recovery. And I specialize in helping entrepreneurs who may be challenged with alcoholism and or addiction. So there's 45 years compressed into, I don't know, 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the long history, and yeah, quite a journey. There's a lot I want to get to within that. Let's start kind of from in the early stages. So you're in the software space, right? Early
Yes.
on. I mean, this
Yes.
is late 70s,
Yeah. Early 80s. Early 80s.
early
Yeah.
80s. Okay, so thinking about where computers were at this point, I mean, nothing like today, right? Like
Correct.
to start a company in that space, right? Being so young, out of school, and having some partners. I mean, what was it like at that time in terms of, was there a vision about what this technology could be and what it would evolve into in terms of
Uh,
like,
yeah. I don't know if I mean, there was just a fundamental shift going on in the marketplace where IBM had these really massive, big mainframe computers that cost many, many millions of dollars. And Hewlett Packard, along with the other group, many other companies, invented these mid-sized computers, which only cost like $500,000, which by comparison was like a deal. However, they were risky because, like, if you bet on IBM, you never lost your job if you like bet on IBM, if you're an IT manager. But like when I first joined Robel, Hewlett Packard was like the 49th largest computer manufacturer in the US. I mean, when they shut down the HP 3000, they were probably top 3 or 4. So this mini computer was what they were called market was just growing by great leaps and bounds. And we tied our success to HP's growth in that area because we specialized in the computer that they made, which turned out to be a great bet. Um, and we became very, very specialized in that area. Like we were global thought leaders on that computing platform. Like, and we were known as the go-to guys who knew the answers. Or if we didn't know the answers, we knew who had the answers and we could refer you on. And we built that thought leadership through writing papers and traveling and presenting. Um, and fortunately, HP was very successful with that computer, sold it to a lot of businesses, kind of 100 million to 500 million a year revenue kind of companies. Is used to track really boring things like customers, orders, shipping, like just the core parts of businesses. And then I mean, we had, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 product lines when all was said and done, but 2 of them were hit it out of the park home runs. Um,
okay,
and but for us, I think we were having so much fun. Like we weren't, I'd like to say, because now I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs around strategy, and strategic planning. I mean, we did have a strategy, like specialize in the HP computer system, write some of the best software for that platform, and solve real problems for real people. And they'll pay us money for that.
yeah, and that's such a great point. And like, so when you're on that, in the middle of that, and you're growing this company, it's an emerging industry. You're aligned with HP, which is a growing company, kind of a disruptor in the market at that
Correct.
time.
Absolutely. Yep.
And like you said, right, you were just having so much fun, right? Like how important do you think it is for an entrepreneur, how important it is to really, quote, have fun and enjoy what you're doing to be successful?
Uh, yeah. So my pushback to that is why bother if you're not? Like life is too short. I'm not saying it's going to be fun all the time, but most of the time you got to enjoy it. Like, and sometimes like you have to see it in hindsight, like you're torquing up against really tough business challenges or technical challenges, and like it feels like, you're climbing a mountain of slippery mud and every step forward is like two steps back. But when you get to the top of the mountain and then you get some time away from it, like you really realize that you were actually enjoying the journey of something so hard and being able to overcome it. I encourage entrepreneurs that I coach to take some more pleasure in the moment, like to be able to pull back and like see it for more than just slipping in the mud. Um, and like, I'm coming up to a busy time of facilitating 2-day annual planning sessions with my clients who I facilitate for. And the number one expectation I set down every time that I start a facilitation session is let's have fun. Like, building a business should be fun. We should be able to share a few laughs. Um, if you're not in medical or health, like no one's going to die because you made a wrong decision. Like sometimes it's almost like people are so serious that it's like lighten up. Like, it is the future of your business, but like no one will die today by the decision that you made. So, and when I was running Robel, like if we had a really tough client problem and I walked by the boardroom and staff members were meeting to like try and figure out what our response should be, which didn't happen very rarely, but if it did, if I heard laughter coming out of the boardroom, it's like, yeah, we're on the right track. Like we're gonna figure this out. Um, because we can still take a really serious issue and something that is really important, but we can still sit back and like see the bigger picture or have a laugh about how we're behaving in this moment. And so I really encourage that.
Yeah, I mean, agreed, right? Business should be fun, especially you're building a company with other people. You want to be able to have laughs and clearly, right? Take care of the job at hand, but enjoy what you're doing for sure.
And
Um,
one of the things I coach around, if I'll just interrupt for 1 sec. So I have this policy of anytime I start a meeting, I start with a win. Like just go around the room and just say, tell me one thing that's going well today, or it's been good in the last 24 hours. Like even professionally or personally, it doesn't matter. Um, and it changes the whole tone of the meeting when you do that. Like when you start with the wins, it's like it reframes. The challenges never seem quite as big when you've acknowledged something good or something you've achieved recently. So I really encourage people to consider that for their meetings. Start with the win.
Start with the win. Okay. All right. And when you sold, right? So your partner bought you out, and like you said, you were looking for something to do next, and someone sat you down and said, "Listen, your kids are never going to be this age again." Like, is it straight? Do you look back at that? It almost seems strange that it took someone to point that out because is it maybe you were working so hard for so long building this company, and then you get this windfall of money, and because you're so you like it didn't even occur like I should just take some years off and enjoy my family because you were looking for more
Yeah,
work to do.
and I think it's again, you're just so like I mentioned earlier that I started my coaching practice because I want to work less hard. It turns out for me, not working hard is really, really hard. Like I'm super, super hardwired this way. Um, so yeah, I think it's like, I'd spent 20 years. Now we were pretty good. I mean, probably in the last 5 years of running Robel, I took 6 weeks off a year and like went sailing or went traveling with my wife. So I think I had a decent work-life balance. But when I was working, like I was really working. And, being torqued up against a business challenge is like my norm. And it's like, yeah, it took someone else to point that out. Like you can actually get away from that for a while. It's okay. And because I think it's just to be my default behavior for so long, it just doesn't like occur to you. And especially to take such a long break. And of course, it was, the plan was only go for a year. And then in true entrepreneurial fashion, it took twice as long as I expected. Um, so what else is new?
Right.
Right. Um, but yeah, I think just torquing up against business, I mean, remember, I've been doing this since I was 22. I'm still, and now I'm only like 42, but I've been doing it nonstop for 20 years.
In my world, a personal brand is invaluable. A year ago, Easy DC was brand new with just a couple of customers and no online presence. Then I found Hicks Marketing. They helped me amplify my personal brand, build a solid content strategy, publish my podcast, and 10x the number of customers we serve, all in less than 1 year. Do you need a marketing partner who gets you and cares about your success? Reach out to Alicia at hicksmarketing.com for more info and tell her Dave Goulas sent you. It's a long time.
Yeah.
All right. So you come back from the sailing trip and then you start angel investing. And you said that was completely unfulfilling.
Yeah.
And it brings me to another question. Like so many times, right? Entrepreneurs, they may think that they're going to enjoy something or think this is the way to go, and then they get there and they realize this is not it. Like what about that was, because the angel investing, of course, appeals to a lot of people, and of course, right, helping others build their business and sharing your value. But what about it was not fulfilling to you?
I think, first of all, the startup part, which is when you're in as an angel investor, the startup part is not what juices me. It's not what really makes me go. Okay. And even remember when I joined Robel, it was already a successful software business like 2 years in. And now it's like it's figured out its market. It's got a product, it's selling, and like we're now like starting to on the growth path. Um, and that's, for coaching, I try and only work with entrepreneurs, like owner founders who've reached at least 1 million a year in revenue and have at least 10 to 250 employees. Like that's much more my sweet spot. I didn't know that back then. And it's just that early stage and working with people so early in role where they're still figuring it out and they're not that open to outside suggestions. They're very slow to learn. Like I just didn't have the patience for it. And then, the remuneration was like options. And I already am high risk because I put my money in. And now, the compensation is all in options, more high risk. Um, yeah, so I mean, I was doing a lot of stuff. I probably looked at least 100 deals a year and typically invested in about one. Um, so I learned a lot about business and business models and presentations and how to do good angel presentations. But I met Coach Kevin at a training event with a guy called Vern Harnish, which I'd taken one of my young CEOs to. And he was the coach at the back of the room. And I went and talked to him, and he made me more uncomfortable in like 2.5 minutes than I'd been in 4 or 5 years. And I had like a tear in the corner of my eye just from a couple of questions he asked me. And I didn't realize how unfulfilled I was. So I didn't know I wanted to go sail for 2 years till, um, this person suggested it to me. And I didn't really know how fulfilled I was angel investing until Kevin asked me some questions. And then like, I just realized, that this is not working.
Okay.
So, one of the things I really coach and talk about is as entrepreneurs and as alcoholics, it's really, really hard for us to ask for help. And as entrepreneurs, it's really, really hard for us to ask for help. Like we got there usually by the seat of our pants and like torquing away. Um, and like I meet lots of entrepreneurs I could help, but they're not open to being helped. Like I can only help people who want to be helped, right? Or willing to go down a growth path and consider different ideas and options. Um, so, again, Coach Kevin, another kind of transformation point in my life where it was another person who actually was able to illuminate that for me. Because sometimes it's just impossible to see it for ourselves. We're too close to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of that quote, you can't see the picture if you're in the frame, right?
Yep, you got it.
All right, so you make this transition to coaching, and then a big piece of that is the addiction recovery. So let's get into that. How when you made the decision to get sober, I mean, how big of a problem was it for you at that time?
Getting sober is the single biggest achievement of my entire life. And every single morning I have to get up and I have to repeat the single biggest achievement of my life. Like I never get to rest on my laurels, right? It's a one day at a time thing. And and that's really just the power of the drug. Like that's alcohol is the most powerful drug on the planet. It's just socially acceptable and it's not talked about as the most powerful drug on the planet. If you drink enough alcohol over time, you will get addicted, period. Whatever your family background is. It's an addictive drug. So again, like it is the biggest achievement of my life, and I have to repeat that achievement every single day, which that's what I sign up for. That's what I sign up for one day at a time. And I know how hard it is, and I know how hard it is, kind of times whatever it is, times 5 or times 10 to be an entrepreneur. And especially if alcohol is involved in your business in any way, in your networking, in your sales, like a lot of high-end sales, complicated sales process, it's common for the CEO to have to fly down, and have a big dinner, as you're getting close to closing, with the VP of finance or with, just a big team. I had one of my clients a couple of years ago, who was not an alcoholic, but he went to one of these things to close a deal. And he said, everybody had 2, 3 drinks before dinner, and then we had a bottle of wine each at dinner. And, he said, is that alcoholic? And I said, I don't know if anyone there was alcoholic. It's definitely alcoholic drinking. I mean, it would qualify under alcohol use disorder from the NIH which is the American National Institute of Health addiction, alcoholism and addiction. I forget what the final A stands for. Like that's actually the definition. It is more than 5 drinks in a single sitting, more than once a month. And I'm pretty certain all those people at that dinner did it more than once a month. Um, and so, like, for him, like he felt uncomfortable. He didn't want to drink that much. But imagine if you're an alcoholic and now you've got sober, and now you still have to go close those deals. And now you're like surrounded by these senior people who have full expectation that you're going to partake in the drinking. Like it just brings a lot of challenge. So I help coach people with strategies for how to cope with situations like that.
Okay.
Or or how to go to networking events, like local networking events that, like entrepreneurs are often wooed by all sorts of organizations who want to get access to them, and oftentimes with a lot of free booze.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, every trade show I've ever been to, right, there's a cocktail hour and
Same,
there's,
exactly.
right? It's just like you said, it's just part of the deal, right? It's socially acceptable and it's right, it's just what people do. And so how like you obviously coach entrepreneurs and you help people with this. How big of a problem, I guess, is that out there in terms of people that are building their business and struggling with this addiction?
I've done a lot of research to try and find, like, is there data, are entrepreneurs more likely to have alcohol use disorder than the rest of the population? And as far as I can tell, there is no data to tell us that one way or another. What I can tell you is that roughly 10% of the population have alcohol use disorder. So even if we take 10% of all entrepreneurs in the United States, that is a heck of a lot of people, right? And my, felt sense, running your own business generally is pretty stressful. And so it wouldn't surprise me if entrepreneurs had a higher percentage because they use that as their coping mechanism for all of that stress.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. Um, okay, and so with your practice, your coaching practice, I mean, do you typically have is it mainly entrepreneurs that struggle with addiction that you're helping?
No, I mean, people come to me because they have a business problem. Like that's usually how the conversation starts is they've got some sort of business challenge or they're stuck or they can't grow their business or there's some aspect of the business that's keeping them awake at night. And in some cases, people have like heard me on recovery podcasts and they like the fact that I'm in recovery and that they can, that's not why they're coming to me, but they know that that's something that if it comes up, we can talk about and they can talk about it safely, right? Some people are still, and then in some cases, I've just attracted people who have this challenge. And it comes up sometimes in coaching calls and sometimes not. I mean, I'm first and foremost a business coach. I'm not a recovery coach. And in fact, if a client like were to ask me to sponsor them in my 12-step program of recovery, which has happened, I've said quite clearly, like either I sponsor you, in which case I'm not your coach, or you get someone else as a sponsor from your 12-step recovery and we continue our relationship as a business coach. And then most recovery questions go to your sponsor. We still, I still, sometimes with someone who's spent a few years in recovery, when we come to a business problem, I can say, well, which of the 12 steps do you think would apply in this case? Like the 12 steps are a toolkit for living life. People think 12-step recovery is about not drinking. Putting the plug in the bottle is in some ways the easiest part. The hard part is how do I live life with all of its challenges and ups and downs and curves and zigs and zags without going to my solution of choice, which is alcohol. And so in 12-step recovery, the 12 steps are a method for you to solve life problems without having to reach for a drink.
Okay.
So they apply to every aspect of your life, including your business. Um, so that just gives us a shared, because as someone who's worked the steps and is active in their 12-step recovery, I can refer back to that toolkit and it's like there's a deep connection right away. Like, oh yeah, I never thought of applying that in this business case, but it makes perfect sense.
Okay, that's interesting. So you find too that what you learned in the 12-step program has practical application to business completely unrelated to addiction recovery, that same methodology,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Okay.
Like, one of the deepest learnings from my 12-step recovery is I have no control over people, places, and things. And what do we have in our business? A lot of people and a lot of outside things. And
Right.
and it's actually really powerful to come to the realization over what you can control and what you cannot control. Like a person's personality and how they, react to certain things, you might not ever be able to change that. So you might have to make a decision about whether you want to keep that person or not. Um, but it's like, okay, if they're going to be like that, what is my response? Like, I don't have control over how they react, but I do have control over how I respond. So how do I want to show up for that person in situations like this?
Yeah. Yeah. So powerful, right? You always have
And
control of your response.
correct. And you don't have control of most of the rest of it. So what do you need to let control of? And most entrepreneurs were successful in their business because they were control freaks. Like
Mm.
that's how they got successful. And that's one of the big challenges, whether you have addiction or alcoholism involved, as you grow a business, you need to let go of certain things if it's going to keep growing. Because at some point, like you can't have your finger in every pie and the business still grow. It won't work. You don't, no human being has enough capacity to do that. And where I find entrepreneurs get in trouble is they say, oh, I hired this great, general manager, but they don't do what I want. So like I then explore and it's like, well, how do you instruct them? How do you interact with them? And it turns out they're trying to micromanage them, and the GM might have brilliant ideas for how to go solve a particular business problem, but it's completely different than how the entrepreneur does it or thinks about it. And so as soon as they go down that path, the entrepreneur jumps back in, grabs the controls, does it themselves, and now they wonder, well, why is this person not like helping you and working out well? Well, because you keep ignoring what they're doing and taking back control. But they most cases can't see that. And so the coaching becomes, your job is to be clear on what needs to happen and to let go of how it comes about. That's
Mm.
why you hire people that are smarter than you, because they're actually better at the how than you are. But you still have the strategic vision where you're going and what needs to happen in order to get you to where you want to go.
So that's like another evolution of entrepreneurship too, right? Where in
Yes.
terms
Yeah,
of,
totally.
okay.
That's how you grow. That's every entrepreneur has to go through that growth path if the business is going to continue growing. I think I think you wouldn't be human if you didn't have to go through that at some point around some aspect of your business.
Yeah, and I can only imagine it's very counterintuitive for someone that's, maybe been in it 10 years or so versus, right? Because often with the startup, right, and or a growing business early on, you have to be involved in everything. You
Correct.
have to know how everything works. You have to watch everybody. You have to, like you said, control freak. But then, in terms of growing it past a certain point, you're saying it's this, the knowing how and when to let go of certain things to basically let other people who are better than you or do things, certain aspects better than you, do what they do best.
And it's hard because you're afraid the business is going to fail because, hey, I got 10 years. I did all this stuff. Look at how successful we are. I know this works. So there's always some fear, like because it's going to get done differently, because it needs to get done differently so you can grow into the next level. Um, right? And so it's about trust. It's about hiring people that you actually do trust, and but you need to let go of, and they don't work and they don't operate exactly the way you do because they're different people. And if you were really good about your hiring, they're actually better, smarter, quicker, faster than you in the area that you hired them for. So let them do their stuff. But that's like, and it's classic. It's like, okay, I'll let them do their stuff. And then, I 2 weeks later, I have another coaching call. Oh, I grabbed the rope, pulled it all back in, and I'll check in with them. And then, you gotta like, no, you gotta let that go. Um, just remember why you hired them. Remember where you're going to get to if you let them do their stuff. Like, again, a lot of coaching is painting a future vision for where you and your business are going to be. And then we keep reminding you that's your vision. And if you want to get there, then you can't keep doing things the way you used to do them, or you won't get to where you want to go. So what do you want? Do you want to get to where you want to go or not? Because if you do, then you're going to have to change some things that you currently do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and overcoming that fear and making those changes is easier the more crystal clear I help them make that vision of where they're going, and what that island in the distance looks like and what it's going to be like when they get there. Then the easier it is for them to get past fears, um, to get past some of these issues, because it's like they can almost taste where they're heading for and where they're going to arrive.
Mm. Okay.
And that's what I think good coaches do. Good coaches help individuals and businesses paint crystal clear, visions of where they're heading towards.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The vision is so, so important. All right. Last thing before we wrap up, let's just talk about your book. It's called Wind in Your Sails.
Wind in your sails, vital strategies that accelerate your entrepreneurial growth.
And what made you decide to write a book?
Well, when I came out of my gig with WebTech Wireless, that's where the publicly traded VP of marketing role. I really sensed that, there was this fundamental shift, to how people were buying, how they were getting information, which was well on its way. So I interviewed more than 40 entrepreneurs, sales and marketing leaders, and I had also been writing blog posts about business, about my ideas in business for probably 10 years. So I had more than 100 blog posts. And I wanted to share my experience so maybe some other entrepreneurs didn't have to drive into the really big potholes that I'd driven into. So I collect it all into, it's kind of a quarter, a theory book of how to think about business. Like it's 10 chapters I call strategies, but they're really just fundamental parts of a business. Like the entrepreneur themselves, corporate, marketing, sales, product. And then, I took those interviews and I took 10 of them and I made them case studies. So every chapter ends with a case study of an entrepreneur friend of mine. So a third of the content of the book is actually other people's stories. So you don't benefit just from my business experience, you're benefiting from all these other entrepreneurs' experience. And then if you are old fashioned like me and you buy the print copy, I did a really good index because my idea is that when you're stuck, you just pull the book down from a shelf, you look in the index, you find the appropriate place, you read maybe 3, maybe 6 pages, and you'll be unstuck. Like you'll have a few ideas of what to do next. So like there's a little theory about how you can think about this, and then a whole bunch of practical steps you could take to go solve, in each area of the business.
Okay. All right, and we'll link that too in the show notes if people want to grab a copy or learn more about the book. And David, if people want to get in touch with you, find out about your coaching services, or just reach out to you for any other reason, what's the best way people can do that?
Easiest way is visit my website, which is coachdjgreer.com. That's coach, D is in David, J is in James, Greer.com. The top of every page on my website has my phone number and has my email address. So send me an email, send me a text, give me a call. And I want your listeners to know that I offer a free 1-hour coaching call, no obligation. If you are stuck on something in your business, reach out to me and let's make time to get together. And my commitment is if you spend that hour with me, you'll have 3 ideas to accelerate your business in the next 90 days.
All right. We'll link all that in the show notes for everyone as well, so they have that info. All right.
Perfect.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking time today and sharing your journey and all this valuable wisdom. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dave. It's been fantastic being here with you today.
All right. And that is all the time we have for now. We will see you next time.